Awesome. So for those that don't know me, I'm going to keep my camera on for a second. Say hello. My name's Will Meyers. I'm a solution engineer with Esri. And this month I celebrated my 6th year. It's pretty awesome to look at the folks that were on the slide before that are sponsoring this event. I started my career in 2005 at Dewberry. I worked there for 3 years, and then got to do a lot of different things. One of those things was supporting Hurricane Katrina work. And during that time, went down to Louisiana and spent a bunch of time down there. But like all things, this journey has brought me back to Esri and to the software that I started out with. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about one of the things I'm really passionate about, and that's ArcGIS Enterprise. Just for some background, I started with ArcGIS Server early on in its infancy, right? So in the 9x releases of Server. So for some of you are like, oh, that's not that long ago, but for others, you're like, 9, ArcGIS had a version 9. So, and that's quite okay. So ArcGIS Enterprise is a foundational, powerful, flexible, and collaborative system, right? And if we use that in a sentence, ArcGIS Enterprise is powerful in that it provides advanced analytics capabilities, it's user-friendly, it's deployed to fit your organization's needs, it's collaborative, meaning you can share content, share that software with your entire organization, share out content with your stakeholders, and it's really the foundation of your organization's Web GIS. So it seamlessly integrates with that full stack. And we'll talk about that seamless integration and how we can achieve that, right? It's always, anytime we integrate with the enterprise system, it's important that we try to be as seamless as possible. So, but before we get into anything too detailed, let's start simple, right? So what is Web GIS, right? So for some of us, we think of Web GIS and it's defining, right? It's ArcGIS Enterprise and Online are both Web GIS platforms. So the purpose of Web GIS is to make your geospatial content available to machines on which underlying data does not reside, right? So I think we've all kind of experienced that where we've made a direct connection to a database before or edited one machine. But when you're only doing that one content, you can't take that map out into the field or share it with others. So really that's what Web GIS is, and that's how Web GIS is powerful. So remember when we start out, Web GIS is kind of a starting point, right? So a lot of us started out with this concept of all the work is done on our desktop GIS machine, right? I have to have the beefy computer to do the work. And that's a little changing with Web GIS where we're sharing infrastructure to everyone, right? In Web GIS, most of the work that I'm doing is handled by the server infrastructure, right? I'm working through this collaborative portal through a web browser, and I'm connecting it to a connected desktop. So in Web GIS, everyone shares the same data, shared with backend portal, and it's an important construct difference when you think about moving from Desktop GIS to Web GIS. Web GIS is not a replacement, right, for Desktop GIS, but it's a central component for Enterprise GIS. So if we think about Desktop GIS, you finish your work in Desktop, and then I publish it or share it into my Web GIS. That's the fundamental piece, right? That server is sharing that data is going into my web tier and making that data available to users at that web tier level. So it works with ArcGIS Desktop to receive resources as input and turn them into web resources, right? So the Desktop GIS is that complete professional mapping workstation. My the ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise act as that core component. I have ArcGIS apps that sit on top of that, and then I have developer APIs that can be used to build on top of that. So capabilities of ArcGIS Enterprise, right, is to use content, use spatial content in a web browser. So the list of things we can do with Web GIS is ever increasing, right? And to some of you, it may be surprising the things you can do. But the first category is really about web mapping, right? With ArcGIS Enterprise, we've built infrastructure that allows for the basic publishing function to serve out web maps and apps powered by your GIS services. This takes your data and allows it to be visualized on the fly with smart mapping, the ability to hook up all kinds of data and work with it remotely, including complex data like raster data in 3D. The next category goes beyond just that one person. We're talking about connecting and collaborating to empower the entire organization, right? So sharing is the underlying concept, right? Your business units might use Insight to understand where things are going on within your community, or you might have field workers using Collector, field maps, or Survey 123. We can create enterprise sites for your law enforcement officers so they can access data and updates. All of these things need to be in a format that makes sense to them, right? So that's why that Web GIS is the key to that. The last set of capabilities is about complex questions with groundbreaking tools, right? So the ability to use data science and machine learning, develop custom tools and solutions, analyze massive data sets, and monitor real-time data and your IoT. A major focus for ArcGIS Enterprise this year has been particularly growing our data science tools. Machine learning and AI are not just buzzwords. We see them as unlocking new capabilities to solve problems with extraordinary amount of human effort, without an extraordinary amount of human effort, rather. This rich set of tools gives us the ability to build all types of things on top of our solutions. And so that's really the underlying power of the technology. So there are 12 general capabilities, and not every customer uses them all, right? Not every customer uses every single capability, but all of the capabilities are available within the ArcGIS Enterprise. Some of them are accessed as extensions, and some of them are accessed as typical add-ons to the ArcGIS Enterprise system. So what does a Web GIS look like, right? So the three major components of a Web GIS are a front-end portal, a back-end server, and data stores. So you can think of your front-end portal as the store front to your data, right? It's where you go and you see all of the content. It makes it easy to find those things. It's where most of your users are going to interact with your content. The backend servers are designed primarily to support the generation of content and requests, and they can be scaled based upon traffic. And finally, we have different types of data stores to allow data editing, facilitate data retrieval, and store data in a format that makes it easier to display in the web. So the portal is really where you find, use, add, share, and analyze, manage data, right? So many of you guys have used the portal before. It might have not been called ArcGIS Portal, but you might have used ArcGIS Online, which is also a portal of Web GIS. In most cases, your users are going to interact with this site, and this is going to be the only interaction that they're going to have with the Web GIS. They're not going to know that there's a server behind it, or there's a data store or databases. All of the content that they access is going to be through this web browser. You can manage portal in a number of different ways, but the portal is really designed to be used as a front end. On the back end, you can has a wide range of capabilities. You can create groups, content categories, webhooks, item monitoring, and make content management simple to configure and maintain. You can also collaborate, connect with other Web GIS systems to send and receive content. The portal is customizable. You can attach your own system of your own identity management system to the portal so that you don't have to maintain users. You can have a centralized identity management, and it can be expanded upon use. The portal has many different types of user types, and the user signs in with a named identity. Based upon their identity, they have access to different capabilities of view, edit, and analysis, the ability to create, share, and administer. And based upon those capabilities, they have different applications that they use. So one of the key components to an ArcGIS Enterprise is an ArcGIS server. ArcGIS server is the engine that puts all of these things together. Everything that occurs through this process of everything is shared to the portal, and this portal controls access through the process of federation. Basically, federation joins the portal and the server, and the portal becomes the security provider for all items. When an item gets created on the server, it automatically gets shared to the portal. The main unit of an ArcGIS server site is the site, right? A site can be one or many machines, and that can be joined together on equal terms. Each service in the site runs on each machine, making them able to handle multiple requests. These services have their own URL endpoint, which can be accessed via the REST API, which is the most commonly used by developers who wish to create their own solution using these powerful libraries. The ArcGIS data store is one of the most important parts of your GIS is the data, right? So having a centralized location put that data in is important. So for many of you, you have enterprise geodatabases, and enterprise geodatabases play a big role within your Web GIS, but sometimes you need to be able to put in and configure different types of data that users manage, right? So you might have a user that needs to manage different pieces of data, and they can bring their own data into the ArcGIS data store. That might be feature data or tabular data. It might be imagery. It might be big data. It might be 3D content. It might be field data. It might be file-based. It might be shape files. All those things can live within the ArcGIS portal and support your operations. So one of the things to take a look at is that your data starts in ArcGIS Desktop as layers, feature classes, imagery, locators, tools, 3D scenes, and more. In the process of sharing your data, they're published to your server as services. The portal takes these services and enhances them as different items that can be accessed, right? So a layer in your desktop might be a map service on your server, and in your portal, it might be a map image layer that gets brought into a web map. Same thing with an address locator. Address locator on the desktop is a geocoding service on the server, and is a geocoder item within your portal, right? A geoprocessing tool that's built on the desktop is created in the geoprocessing service and becomes a web tool. So next I'm going to jump into the components of Enterprise a little bit more. We talked a little bit about the portal, we talked about the server, and we talked about the data store. For most of these users, the content they'll largely be working with the Enterprise portal, but their items are being stored as services on the server, and their source data is either being copied to the data store or being referenced as is. Since these items are stored in the ArcGIS server, their service endpoints access can be tuned by the administrators, data managers, but can also be tapped into by savvy developers who wish to use our rich APIs to develop their custom solutions. You may notice the ArcGIS Web Adapter in this picture, which we haven't discussed yet, and I haven't gotten to that. The Web Adapter is the main thing that the Web Adapter. The main thing to understand about Web Adapter is it basically acts as a proxy to process incoming requests and route them to the correct component of your Web GIS. We have tons of more details about these different components, but really your GIS analysts, app builders, and app viewers will be coming through the portal, whereas administrator, data managers, and developers might be doing a connection to the ArcGIS server. So the ArcGIS Enterprise is powerful, right? It has sophisticated server roles, advanced analytics, data science, and data science. And each of these roles might need specific capabilities. So you might have a server that it focuses on just being a GIS server. It is used for map services, analysis, and geocoding. But you might have a ton of imagery, and you might want to have the ability to have both raster image services and do raster analysis. You also might have real-time data to feedback and have event-based notifications, right? Like AVL or flood gauges. You might have a development environment like Notebook Server. Notebook Server is one of our newest server roles. It was introduced within the last 2 years, and it hosts ArcGIS notebooks. It's a Python-based interactive development environment to visualize GIS content and run data science workflows. And if you have truly large data sets, you might use GeoAtlantic servers to process that data and focus on vector and tabular data sets, right? So ArcGIS Notebook Server is new in 2019. Like I said, it's 2 years old. And for some of you, you might have more experience with ArcGIS notebooks as notebooks within ArcGIS Online. Notebook Server is that same capability of ArcGIS Online. It's just hosted on your own infrastructure. Right, we have out-of-the-box spatial analysis, right? That spatial analysis tools, those standard tools are commonly used and can be accessed through a map viewer in the UI. This animation shows how we can access those tools within the portal and utilize them. ArcGIS Enterprise is a connected enterprise environment, and we can bring in managed services that Esri manages, like the Living Atlas of the world. So just because you have your content in it, you can also bring in content that's managed by Esri to help aid in the work that you're doing. We have efficient content management by using groups, different categories, different category types. These features and more ensure that regardless of how large your Web GIS becomes, that your administrators can stand up and maintain effective content management practices, right? So by having these different capabilities, we can make the data easier to manage. We have different, one of the other powerful things is the ability to build web apps. We have configurable applications that allow for, what you see is what you get type widget-based programming, but we also have SDKs and APIs that allow for more fine-grained control of the capabilities within the ArcGIS system. When you have a powerful system that hosts all your spatial data, you also have a responsibility to keep that content secure. When your analysts and customers are relying on that powerful information, they need to ensure that it's always available. Enterprise comes with tools and practices for you to enforce confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You're able to choose the level of security, and we'll talk about that in the next session, but you'll also be able to aware of who's using your site. You'll be able to guarantee that authoritative data keeps its integrity, and you'll be able to minimize or eliminate the amount of downtime and data lost if your machines ever experience failure with high availability and disaster recovery tools. So ArcGIS Enterprise is flexible. So this is kind of where we pivot from that introduction to get into a little bit more of understanding that no two deployments are the same, because every Web GIS is deployed for unique reasons by unique organizations. Deploying ArcGIS Enterprise in a way that works for you starts with asking the right questions. So some questions you might want to ask: who needs access to the Web GIS? What kind of GIS work will users be doing? How much work needs to be done, right? These questions will help you make these decisions. We need this amount of machine resources. This many people need to have this level of access. We as administrators will have this much customization on the back end. We'll make it as secure as we need to, and with that strategy in mind, we'll show some different ways to carry out these decisions. So for infrastructure type, we commonly see customers deploying on virtual machines, but it's also common to see deployments on private clouds in Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, as well as many others. We also have Esri Managed Cloud Services, and newly this year we have the ability to deploy on different Kubernetes-based platforms. The infrastructure size is also a big determining factor of what and how many what that looks like. So the number of machines, how big is each machine? What's the CPU cores and RAM? Different server roles have different capabilities and needs. GeoAnalytics server, for example, needs more capabilities. GeoEvent needs more capabilities, right? There are server roles and add-ons that require separate machines to be added. Workflow Manager, for example, or specific industry solutions like linear referencing, etc. Next, you want to establish a highly available deployment. So you have a plan for redundancy, right? So what's our plan to deal with machine failure? How do we limit downtime and data loss? What are the processes for having standby machines? And also, what's our backup strategy? And then we have deployment tools. Some of my favorite deployment tools are PowerShell DSC for ArcGIS. It gives you the ability to quickly deploy servers with PowerShell scripting. It's also one of the most commonly used scripting languages for and is widely used by local governments. So Web GIS isn't necessarily one or the other, right? So oftentimes we see customers start at many different starting places, and that's okay. It's completely flexible. So you might start with ArcGIS Online for your public-facing applications. But then you might begin with ArcGIS Enterprise and software, and then connect your enterprise to those base maps and content services. And then finally, you might have a full collaboration between your ArcGIS Online and your ArcGIS Enterprise accounts. So planning and adjustment does not stop after you deploy. Your usage patterns and traffic volume change. Scalability is crucial. So just because your system worked for you when it was first created does not mean that it was, yes, exactly. So the common mistake is that I've built this system and it's going to always work and support my needs. Your usage patterns and traffic volume might change. In Florida, we run into this all the time where a system that was set up for daily use suddenly has to perform beyond its capabilities. And that might be during a hurricane event, or it might be during, it might be that the local paper picked up a web map of yours and then shared it out. And suddenly your service that was just showing your county boundary is now down because the public is hitting it at an extraordinary rate. So just because something was set up one way does not mean that it doesn't necessarily need to change. Server sites and data stores can be tuned. Cloud deployments allow you to use these platforms with auto-scaling tools. An ArcGIS Monitor tool lets you stay on top of all your usage with machine stats so you know and why you need to adjust your system. ArcGIS Enterprise works with your organization's existing authentication system. So we have different capabilities for signing on. By default, built-in identity stores are used. And for small teams, that might be effective. But once you get to a certain number of users, as an administrator, you do not want to be managing those user accounts. So that's where we'd say it's best to look at integration with either a SAML-based single sign-on or an enterprise identity store that integrates your organization's authentication system. This can be used to create both new accounts or tie into existing organizational accounts. By using this setup, it gives you the ability to completely secure your system. And if someone leaves your organization, they will, once they are removed from your active credentials, they will no longer be able to access that system. ArcGIS Enterprise is collaborative, right? So we're going to talk a little bit of ways about how that collaboration can be achieved. Content sharing has always been a central focus of our technology. So the ArcGIS Enterprise portal has the ability to share content like data, maps, apps to multiple devices and sites. You create groups of users in the portal and give them access that others don't need, right? So by using group-based management, we can secure content and those items in the portal. Within your portal, security and sharing are handled at the item level. So what's an item, you might ask? Well, it's everything in your portal, whether it's a file, a custom app, a CSV, everything in your portal is considered a portal item. Sorry, I had to sneeze. And you can adjust those sharing settings for each item you own. By the way, that long list on the right is all the items that are supported by portal. And we definitely don't expect you to memorize it, but know that a lot of content can be shared within your portal. Security in your portal is handled at the item level, right? Like I said, you can go from sharing nothing, right? So an item can be just shared with you, or it can be shared with one or more groups within your organization, shared with your whole organization, or shared with everyone, right? So there's some really good reasons why you may not necessarily want to share with everyone, right? Sharing with everyone might be also mean sharing with the public. And by sharing with the public, you might be allowing the public into data sets and systems that normally you wouldn't want them to have access to. By using role-based security, we can limit who can share with either groups, with your entire organization, or shared with everyone. Content sharing isn't also limited to members of your organization, right? A feature called Distributed Collaboration extends the reach of that intuitive, secure sharing model. You can set up collaborations between multiple portals or between a portal and ArcGIS Online. These are pipelines based on trust, right? So that allow you to send items securely. You're in control of what gets shared and how often and how frequently it gets updated. Ultimately, it promotes what we like to call as a system of systems, enabling organizations to work together and accomplish tasks. So an example of a distributed collaboration might be between a police department or in a fire department, right? They can have a common hub between those different data sets and share that data between them. Enterprise sites are another component of portal that I think is a really important one to understand. Enterprise sites give you those same capabilities as ArcGIS Hub and put those on put those on your enterprise portal. So instead of giving a link to an application, you can give a link to a site that has a suite of applications that are constantly being updated. It allows a deeper dive with pages and delivering specific content to a specific audience. So I went over a ton of stuff, right? There's a ton of resources out there to learn more about ArcGIS Enterprise or just Web GIS in general. It goes without saying that there are a whole host of experts at Esri to feel free to speak with. But if you have questions about ArcGIS Enterprise, how it to be set up, I'm happy to support conversations with customers. One of the things that, like any big enterprise system, is it takes proper planning. Planning might take, depending on your organization, a year or more to understand, hey, what are going to be the demands on this system going forward? As we kind of go back to kind of more normal work, our patterns of use are going to change as well. So something that was working prior to COVID, right? We saw that our business systems were impacted in different ways by COVID. And so as we start going back to work, we can definitely start seeing how those systems might change. And it's always a good time to think about, hey, how do I address going forward with those resources? There's a ton of stuff within our documentation, in our ArcGIS blogs, in ArcGIS GeoNet, but one of my favorite places to find content is within Esri's different YouTube platforms. There are a ton of recorded sessions on Enterprise, and this is just scratching the surface. So to recap, ArcGIS Enterprise is foundational. It anchors all your Web GIS workflows. It allows you to receive content from desktop and mobile applications, and it's connected with all Esri apps. It's powerful in that it's sophisticated server roles, advanced analytics, can support data science, and efficient content and data management, and controls for security and reliability. It's flexible in that it can be set up on a versatile architecture. We have helpful deployment tools. It's scalable and adaptive, and it works within your IT setup. It's collaborative in that it's easy content security and sharing. You can tailor sites for your audiences, and distributed collaboration can allow you to share content with both portals and ArcGIS Online. And that is it for me. So I'm going to go back to the home screen. And from there, we'll happy to take questions in the chat or through, if I don't know if they're able to unmute, but happy to take questions.
Yeah, guys, anyone have any questions? We have about 10 minutes left in the session here. Will, thank you so much for that presentation.
Sure.
I do have a question. You know, I'm a newbie in the GIS field, and I was curious. So if you were in a desktop environment, how easy is it to, I guess, migrate into the enterprise environment?
Sure, that's a great question. Migrating to enterprise is always fun. And I think it's easier now than it's ever been, right? So, but also, you know, enterprise might not be the first place I would send you, right? So I think your question is more of how do I embrace more Web GIS, the Web GIS pattern, right? This pattern here. And that really means thinking about how to best utilize different things. So one of those things is learning about, hey, how is data published and shared, right? Do I need a feature service that's editable? Do I need just a static image of a map? What are the requirements of the user, right? Is it going to be used in the field? And a good easy way to do that without having to, and a good way to learn is to actually use ArcGIS Online. ArcGIS Online has all the same capabilities of an enterprise environment, right? You can manage users and groups. You can learn about how to bring in services into web maps. But when you really want to start talking about taking your authoritative data, you can take that data and bring it in to your organization that way.
All right, cool.
But yeah, there's a lot of like getting to know ArcGIS Enterprise type presentations that are out there that are really useful as well.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Oh, hold on. Ned Cake wants to say, hi, Will, great job.
Thanks, Ned. Oh, also, happy GIS Day to everyone. I wasn't able to join this morning because I was on a presentation, another presentation. GIS Day is the time when Esri folks are pulled in 18 different directions, and it's nice to be able to spend time with you guys. So.
Nice, that's a great way to celebrate GIS Day. It's a GIS conference, so you guys doing anything to celebrate it in any other way? Are you doing another conference today, Will?
I'm not. This is the last activity for the day.
Nice.
So.
All right, anyone else with questions or comments? Daniel Thomas, let's see. Okay, so Daniel Thomas also wants to say great job, Will.
Yeah, another thing I will say is for those of you that are waiting eagerly for 10.9.1, it'll be released tomorrow.
Nice.
So, and something interesting to know about 10.9.1 is it's the last release to support the ArcMap binaries. Can you guys see my Word application here?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things to know is that when you go to install 10.9.1, if you're going to install 10.9.1, if you are no longer using ArcMap, you can choose to not install the ArcMap runtime support. And so how you do that is you go to the ArcMap runtime support and you say, hey, this feature will not be installed. And by doing that, you'll get this exclamation mark. You will not get those ArcMap runtimes so that all of your services will have to be published from Pro. And that's completely okay. And one of the great parts about that is it makes the install like half as big, which makes it twice as fast on the install process. So it's a really cool way to see that. So I thought I would share that with you guys as well.
Nice, thanks for letting us know. Oh, and Ned also wants to let us know that TLC GIS considering deploying enterprise in Kubernetes.
Yeah, so we're really excited about folks moving enterprise GIS into Kubernetes. For those that don't know, what that does is allow you to deploy instead of on a single server or a virtual machine, you're deploying components on microservices. So individual components of the ArcGIS system are deployed on, think about it, on really tiny nodes within a system, and it allows for dedicated scalability and really focused tuning, and is a really interesting way to support future operations.
Awesome. And on that note, check out Dan Thomas's presentation at 3 p.m. to know more about, is it Kubernetes or Kubernetes?
It's Kubernetes, or you might say K8.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Well, anyone else have any questions or comments? Now, will your presentation be available to share? Are you?
Yeah, I'll be able to share the slides, and this session's going to be is recorded anyway, so
Yep. Okay. Yep.
it will be able to be shared. Yep, that's no worries.
Awesome. Okay, cool. All right. Let me do a quick run through. All right. And I think that's it, guys. So thank you so much for joining us with Will Meyers.
Yep.
Again, the presentation is being recorded. It'll be on the SHARG website and YouTube channel. Again, and if you have any questions for Will, please contact him. As you can see, his information is on the screen. And yeah, thank you. And please enjoy the rest of your day. Happy GIS Day.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Will. Bye-bye.